4-point Warrior lead as Klay moves up the three-point ladder. Klay Thompson has tied Kyle Korver, 6th all-time in made threes, 2,450. But he might have just given the Golden State Warriors a win off the offensive rebound by Draymond Green.
It's time for Warriors Wrap-Up. We'll bring you into the locker room and hear from Coach Kerr and the players. Highlights from the game. Warriors Wrap-Up starts now.
Yeah, that was the play of the game. Tim Roy on the call for the Golden State Warriors 117-113 win in San Antonio. A necessary victory, 4-1 road trip at season high, 6 games above 500. Now 2 games clear of the Houston Rockets. But that was the play of the game. It was an all hustle effort by Draymond Green to get in there, secure position, grab that offensive rebound, kick it out to Klay Thompson, who, by the way, did not have a great game tonight, but hits the biggest shot of the evening to get them the necessary breathing room. And it's ironic, too, as Sterling Bennett brings us in with a kind of a lovable tune, trying to set the mood here on an Easter Sunday. Evan Giddings with you, by the way, on Warriors Wrap-Up at 95.7 The Game. And it's ironic because what felt like a game that came down to the wire, which there was zero breathing room allowed. Like, that was an exhausting, nail-biting, close win for the Warriors tonight in San Antonio, perhaps unnecessarily so. It also gave the Warriors a lot of breathing room in the Western Conference, or at least more than they've had, it feels like, in the last 2 weeks, because the Houston Rockets finally lost a basketball game. The Dallas Mavericks put it on Houston earlier this evening, and so the Warriors now have 2 games up on Houston right before arguably the most important week of the season coming up, with 2 games against the Mavericks as well as Houston, and then a Sunday matchup with Utah. So a lot is in front of the Golden State Warriors right now as they kick off the the 75th game of the season, but they got 8 more in front of them, and they got to find a way to pick up enough W's to get themselves either into the play-in tournament as the 10. I think the 9 seed is still in range for them. 1.5 games back still of Los Angeles, who also was victorious tonight behind 40 points from LeBron James. It's interesting. There's a few throwback games around the association tonight, but I don't know if there was one more so than in San Antonio by Draymond Green. And look, it's a 4-point win against an 18-win Spurs team. A game in which I thought the Warriors in the first quarter, Draymond perhaps included, he said it after the game, talking on television, that his 2 turnovers in the first 3 minutes, were not great. I thought the Warriors came out flat. It was kind of a soft, and I just thought not very interesting first half from them in particular, though they were able to shave it to 8 points right before the break. San Antonio had every right to win this basketball game. The Warriors only outscored them in the third quarter. So they got outscored for 3 of the 4 quarters tonight, but managed to walk away with a 4-point win, and a win that they needed because of the loss by Houston. This was one you wanted to capitalize on with a tough week upcoming against 2 playoff teams and one that's hot on your heels. So, to me, the story tonight's Draymond. It is. Draymond Green was fantastic this evening. He did just about everything they could ask for. Again, after somewhat of a slow start. And I think he also had 4 turnovers as a whole in the first half. But in that third quarter, he was unbelievable. And he was a guy that reminded the Warriors of why they still need him. Coming off a week in which he caught a lot of hell from myself on this very station, criticizing him for the choice that he made in Orlando, for the emotions that he extracted from his teammates, in particular Steph, who was also fantastic tonight, by the way. 33 points and 8 assists in 32 minutes for the chef, ho-hum. But he's not the story tonight because of what Draymond Green did. 20 points. At one point, he was the leading scorer through that third quarter. He had 11 of his 20, in the third. But 11 assists. I think he only had 1 turnover in the second half. He had 6 rebounds and also had 6 steals, 2 of them big, because he picked the pocket of Victor Wembanyama in the fourth quarter. And he just completely, Draymond did, flipped the momentum of this basketball game in the third quarter. Again, the Warriors only outscored the Spurs in the third. And that was enough for them to win tonight, I think, because of the catalyst that Draymond Green was. And when you come down a guy's road, you also got to face the music. You got to tip your cap. You got to give him his credit. And Draymond Green, to me, I think in his heart of hearts, knew that he owed the Warriors this kind of game, that he owed them this sort of performance after what nearly happened last week, which was a game slipping through their fingers on Wednesday because he got ejected. But he knows that these games are possible for him against one of the budding superstars in the NBA and Victor Wembanyama. I thought he was fantastic defensively. I thought he was cerebral on the offensive side. He was aggressive. Went 8 of 9 from the floor, hit a couple of three-pointers, one of which in the second half. He was the catalyst behind the 29-8 run that kickstarted the second half in the third quarter that completely changed the momentum of this basketball game. And of course, you heard off the top, he made the biggest play. He had the biggest rebound of the evening, securing position underneath, using what Steve Kerr has described as genius to position himself to grab the offensive rebound, find Klay Thompson for what proved to be the difference and the three-pointer at the end of that basketball game, in which it was slipping, in which the Warriors, it felt like that game might have gotten away from them if Draymond didn't make that play, and then also forced a foul underneath on Wembanyama on the next possession, getting to the free throw line, splitting, but hitting the necessary free throw to put the Warriors up 4 and put that game away. Draymond Green was the catalyst in the third quarter, and he was the closer in the fourth quarter. And he did it with some offense, but he did it with just about every single part of the box score that you can touch. Defensively, rebounding, moving the basketball. This was a game where I felt like Draymond Green, because of what happened on Wednesday, knew that he owed the Warriors. And it was an important victory because it clears them 2 games of Houston. So if you're going to come down a guy's road, you got to tip your cap when they play a hell of a basketball game like Draymond Green did tonight. And it was needed. The Warriors also didn't get great contributions from their wings. You know, the front line, and Jonathan Kaminga missed a third straight game tonight with knee tendonitis in both of his knees, which might be a little more concerning moving forward. But Draymond Green had to pick up the slack. Steph Curry had to pick up the slack. And the bench had to pick up the slack for a slow start in the first half, for Andrew Wiggins being largely a ghost, Klay Thompson up until the end of the game, though he did hit the biggest shot of the game. I thought he struggled mightily, really in the first half and throughout the majority of that basketball game. The 2 wings being, Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins. I know that they had the front line of Draymond and Trace Jackson-Davis. In fact, they might have found something with those 2 bigs that I do want to dig into a little more deeply as we move on here. But, to me, they needed guys to step up in this game because they lacked consistency. And they still managed to win the final 4 games of this 5-game road trip against beatable opponents. Miami was depleted. You got to get that win. They did. Orlando, they found a way to will themselves in a gut check fashion, down Draymond and Kaminga. And then on Friday, you take care of business against Charlotte. This was a game that San Antonio had 3 starters out. Vassell, Sohan. Keldon Johnson was in this game. It was Wembanyama and friends. And to their credit, the Spurs also took it to the Warriors and beat them without Wembanyama earlier this season. And it looked like for a moment they might have done it again, this time with Big Vic, who was fantastic. But I thought Draymond Green also defensively, in addition to Trace Jackson-Davis, they operated on Wembanyama the way you want to, which is making him work as hard as possible offensively. And then on the defensive side of the floor, you're kind of at his mercy. And that's where I think the Warriors really struggled. Like, Wembanyama had his fingerprint all over that first quarter. He was altering shots. I think he had 2 blocks in the first 3 possessions of the basketball game. He was altering shots. You could tell that there was nothing going on in the paint. And I think the Spurs, because they scored 34 points in the first quarter, they got the majority of it in the paint. They scored 18 of which in the lane. Draymond Green and TJD shut that down the remaining 3 quarters. And then on the offensive side, they were able to get enough on Big Vic, and they were able to take advantage of when he was on the bench. So, overall, I think the Warriors, this was a show-me game. This was a game that they had to dig down deep and get. But I'm curious what people feel about it, because at the end of the day, it is a Spurs team that is the 3rd worst record in the West, or in the association, worst record in the Western Conference. It was a game the Warriors needed to have, and they did. And this was a game where their 2 best players overall this season, their 2 best stars, Stephen Curry and Draymond Green, dragged them to the finish line. And they got contributions, and we can get into the second unit that I thought really balanced things in the first half. Pajemski, TJD, the 2 rookies played well in this game. I thought Gary Payton II also had a big performance off the bench. And then Mr. Stay Ready, Moses Moody, was ready for his moment when Andrew Wiggins just didn't have it tonight. So 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings with you on Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game after the Dubs take down the San Antonio Spurs and survive in San Antonio 117-113. now a season high 6 games above 500. They are 22-15 on the road with 4 more road games left. If they get 3 of those, they're a 25-win road team, which, by the way, I believe last season, it's going to be much different this year because it's a little more up around the league. But I believe last year there were only 3 teams that won 25 or more road games. So that's not an insignificant number. It sucks because you're 18-19 at Chase Center, but this is a very good road team, and I wonder how people feel about that as they look ahead towards the road games they got coming up. It's a 4-4 home and road split, but you got some winnable road games, and you're probably going to have to go on the road, again, either in the play-in tournament or you might have to go on the road twice in the play-in tournament if you're the 10 seed. But, of course, if you end up getting out of the play-in and into the first round, you're going to have to go on the road and win a tough road series against one of those top 2 probably seeds. So, again, 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings with you on 95.7 The Game. I see you all filing in on YouTube and Twitch, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. I see you on the Comcast Business Text line. Again, the number is 888-957-9570. This is from the 510. Stephen Curry, wow, plus big minutes from Moody and Pods. Maybe Draymond Green's best game since the All-Star break. I'm with you. This is also from the 510 in a very different tone. Pathetic win. Beat barely one of the worst teams in the league. Green and Steph didn't want to play smart with 5 and 4 turnovers. Clay's trying to shoot his way out of his bad 3-point shots by shooting them more. It hasn't worked all season. Not going to work in the play-in. I'm curious because I think there's 2 ways you can look at this game. You can look at it as the end of a 5-game road trip. They played their 5th game in 7 days. They clearly looked old. They didn't have it at the beginning of the game. The starters did, and I'm talking mainly about Clay, Wiggins, but even Draymond wasn't great out of the gates. Curry was not hitting out of the gates. He was firing on all cylinders in the second half, and especially in the fourth quarter. But do you look at it like they dug deep and they got a gutsy victory? You're looking at it like, wow, I don't know if that was actually that impressive of a win. I mean, again, well, and I appreciate you, SD, on YouTube. Couldn't let my man work from home today. Happy Easter to you too. No, we are in studio. We are in studio. My man Sterling Bennett is here. Chris O'Connell's here. Chris O'Connell actually took his kid Easter egg hunting earlier today. So he's the real MVP today because that guy was with his family, and now he's here helping us out at 95.7 The Game. So shout out to Chris. Shout out to Sterling. Shout out to everyone that was watching this game that's filing in as we continue to move here. Again, the story to me is Draymond Green in a game that I felt like a performance that he owed the Golden State Warriors after what transpired throughout the rest of the week earlier, and really kind of, I think, accurately explains the dichotomy of Draymond, which is you're going to get the yin, you're going to get the yang, and at the end of the day, it's up to you individually to decide whether or not it's worth it to you. And for the better part of 12 years, it's been worth it, obviously, to the Golden State Warriors. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interesting discussions tomorrow on this radio station. I look forward to hearing from everyone from 6 to 6. But with Draymond doing what he did against a Spurs team that's not very good, again, and a Spurs team that was also down 3 starters, but they needed it. Like that's the fact. They needed that performance from Draymond as well as Steph Curry, who had 33 points. And I thought after a rough start to the road trip, ended strongly. He got better throughout the 4-game road trip, but 33 points for the Chef on 23 shots, hit 7 threes, also had 8 assists. Yes, did turn over the basketball 4 times, but he was able to help Draymond get it done. And Draymond, I think that was like the two-way impact that he had which was so impressive to me because he was able to, I think, play more center field. Like this was actually something that floated through my mind about their 2-big combination. And in a way, I think it unlocks Draymond, the defender, a little more. There's no doubt that Draymond can play minutes if needed at the 5 and match up with a guy who's 7'2", 7'3" in Victor Wembanyama. He can also match up and do a fine job on the Jokic's, the Anthony Davis's, if he needs to, the Embiid's and all the rest. But to me, what they've found with this new look starting lineup, in particular at the 4 and 5, is that what I saw in the second half when Draymond was locked in defensively is he was kind of able to float a little more. He was able to play center field more. And that's to me where he's a great on-ball defender, but he's also such a cerebral defensive player that if you allow him to float a little bit, then he can direct traffic and he can go wherever he needs to go. Trayce Jackson-Davis drew the initial assignment on Big Vic today. I mean, he was matched up with him, I thought, a lot of the game up until the end, but you saw those two strips on Wembanyama down the stretch by Draymond, and both of those, I believe, were on help defensive plays. He was not on him, but he came over, knew that the Spurs really only had one option, and was able to stick his hand and get it out of the cookie jar, and also, of course, make big rebounds like he did at the very end of that game. Drew a foul on Wembanyama, but I think when Draymond is a little more free, and to me, Trayce Jackson-Davis unlocks that freedom on both ends of the court, well, then you get to really see how smart he is. You get to see the genius of Draymond. And again, it is against a Spurs team that the Warriors had to fight to win that basketball game, had to fight to not blow that basketball game. But it doesn't, to me, dampen the necessity of the performance by Draymond. Yeah, it's probably not a great sign that they won by 4 despite Dre being a plus 13, which was a game high, scoring 21, had a season high 6 steals, 11 assists, and 6 rebounds. He stuffed the stat sheet and only missed one shot, did miss one free throw. It's probably not a great sign that they needed that to get by San Antonio, but at the same time, it's hard to sit up here with what we've seen the entire year and nitpick this and nitpick that. I'm not going to tell you that this win is going to automatically change how I feel about the Warriors play-in or playoff or championship odds. But the fact of the matter is they needed this win tonight because of what's coming up and who is on their heels and who lost today. And when you look at the big picture, this was an important performance by Draymond. It was an important performance by Steph Curry. And they did get important contributions from the rest of the guys that had to make do, for Andrew Wiggins going 2 of 12, for Klay Thompson up until the end being 5 for 13. And the bench was good in this game. They got 4 players from the second unit that played 20 minutes or more. Chris Paul, Gary Payton II, Brandon Podziemski, and then Moses Moody. So they had to puzzle piece this win together. But to be honest, these are situations that earlier in the year, I don't know if they'd be able to do that. And when I look at what they've been able to accomplish since February the 1st, they now have 21 wins. That's second most in the NBA. That doesn't mean that they're going to win a championship, but that means that they've found something. And I'm not sure if these are games that they win 3 or 4 months ago. This was a game that was supposedly in the Warriors' hands down the stretch. You look at, they were up by 12 points with 3 minutes and 43 seconds left to play. And their lead became 2 with 59.4 seconds left to play. So they nearly blew this game. And in fact, they might have blown this game 3 or 4 months ago against a bad team. And we'd be sitting here and we'd be pissed off. We'd be wondering, this team's this and this is that. And it's all for naught. And Curry and Draymond, who cares? But they had to win this basketball game, and they did. So I'm curious how you're taking the win, how you're taking the road trip. 4-1 over 5 games. They're 22-15 on the road. They're a season high 6 games above 500. How are you feeling? 888-957-9570 is the number. On Warriors Wrap-Up, Evan Giddings with you. Let's get out to San Mateo and talk to Steel Toe. Steel Toe, how are we doing? First of all, happy Easter, Steel Toe. How are you?
Oh, very good. Thank you. Happy Easter. Yes, I'm very impressed with a hard-fought win. I understand they were on the road for a long time and they were exhausted. But even though the game was good, I'm glad they finished strong. In the beginning with Wiggins, he's been doing this all year long. It was a it was a good game plan by Steve Kerr. He attacks the rim. He attracted Victor Wembanyama to go after him. So what does that mean? Trayce Jackson-Davis is open for a dunk. He just had to hand it off and pass it to Jackson-Davis. But he keeps forcing it, getting blocked and missing the shots. It's like Wiggins went back to Wiggins again and doesn't know how to pass. And Draymond, nobody's been guarding you all year. Finally, you start hitting your layups. You got to make up for what you did last Wednesday. And this is what I always thought. If Draymond would hit his layups, because nobody's guarding him, maybe the whole team could score better. But I'm glad they won today. I just got to pick up the details. I think they could get away from Houston. Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Steel Toe. Yeah, well, that's why the win was important, because you do move a little bit away from Houston. You're now 2 games clear of the Rockets, and not that the season is yours or the 10 seed is yours. You still got to play the final 8 games, but it does set up a pretty pivotal matchup on Thursday night in Houston, where if the Warriors win that game, especially if they find a way to somehow beat Dallas on Tuesday, I'm not necessarily optimistic, but if they beat Houston on Thursday, well, then they're in the driver's seat, because then they have the tiebreaker, and then the Houston Rockets have to, if they were 2 games back, get 3 games up on the Warriors. So it acts like a little bit of a buffer, more of a cushion for Golden State. And so that's why I think this game, from a standing standpoint, from a play-in tournament standpoint, or play-in elimination bracket standpoint, is important for the Warriors. You're right. It's not. No one's going to sit up here and tell you that beating the Spurs is a badge of honor. And I don't think anybody in the Warriors locker room would tell you that either, especially with them not even being at full strength. Wembanyama looks like an absolute superstar, and that guy is going to be scary. And I love the fact that the Warriors played them 4 times this year, because it gave me 4 opportunities, in addition to what I watch of the Spurs, seldom speaking. But it gave me an opportunity to watch Wemby play. Well, he missed 1 game. Of course, they won that game that he missed. But it gave me 3 opportunities to watch a player that I cannot wait to see what he becomes, because you can already tell that before drinking age, this guy is one of the best, if not perhaps the best or most impactful defenders in the league. Now, Draymond had some stretches where he took over this game on the defensive side of the court, and it also involved picking the pocket of Wembanyama. But in that first quarter, Victor Wembanyama was absolutely everywhere. I mean, it was scary how many shots he altered, how many shots he blocked. And he was coming off a 40-point, 20-rebound performance with 7 assists in a win against the Knicks. The Spurs had, to their credit, won 3 in a row. But Vic tonight, 32 points, had 3 blocks and 4 steals. Talk about a stat sheet stuffer. 9 rebounds and 5 assists. I mean, I guess you could argue maybe took too many threes. He was 3 of 10 from deep. But if that 3 ball comes along in any way, shape, or form, I just don't know how you're going to be able to stop him from taking over basketball games. And if the Spurs put any sort of talent around him in the near future, like right now, this is the youngest team that Greg Popovich has ever coached since '96, and they're 23.5 years old on average. One of the youngest teams in the league. In fact, I think they are the youngest. But if there's any sort of talent and perhaps veteran presence around Wembanyama, that is going to be a very good basketball team. I think less about what he does offensively than what he does on the defensive side of the floor. He's still got a lot to learn, but I mean, just his mere presence and the fact that he knows how many shots he can either get to or alter. I mean, he deterred Curry a couple times just from even attempting a shot. There was a few plays in which the Warriors, who to their credit are pretty small, would just dribble into the lane, turn around, and kick it out. Now, they might have scored on that possession. They might have got a 3. They might have even got to the line and got fouled. But the fact that he's cutting off each of your first looks and he's making things, and he's making things really difficult for the offense is a sight to see. All right, 888-957-9570 is the number. Let's get out to Drew Down and Tracy. Drew Down, what's going on, my man? Happy Easter. How are you?
Hey, what's up, Evan? Happy Easter to you, brother. Just want to start off by saying that boy Wemby is a problem, man. Offensively, hitting a 3. He did his best in the fourth quarter to not go away. And defensively, he 3 blocks, 4 steals. Felt like he had 5, 6 blocks, especially in that first quarter, man. And then you know how it is. Once you drive to the lane, you get blocked once or twice. You start hesitating to go in there. And I think it was Draymond had a couple passes that Wemby just ate up with his length. So shout out Wemby, man. Once they get some shooters and some talent around him, that team is going to be a problem. I thought the story of the game was Warriors were down 8 going into half, and then after the third quarter, they were up 8. So hell of a third quarter, kind of throw it back to the DEFCON 3. I thought that tech on GP2 in the fourth for throwing the ball to Stanchion was weak as hell. If that's the rule, that's the rule, but I still don't agree with that. I thought that was pretty weak. And Draymond Green, man, he was a little loosey-goosey with the ball, at first. He had some turnovers, but third and fourth quarter, man, he was amazing on Wemby. I thought at times Wemby was playing a little bully ball on TJD. He had that one sequence where he just, shoulder, and just posterized them with the, Blake Griffin type of throw and dunk. So I thought Draymond was great on him. He had a steal on him towards the end of the game. So shout out Draymond. In my opinion, man, he was a player of the game. And he obviously, he had that big free throw to seal it. And then I don't know if it was him or Trace. They had that big offensive rebound and kick out to Clay for three. That kind of, I'm not sure what pushed the lead to 5 or 6 or whatever it was, but I thought that was a huge point in the game. So shout out Draymond. And then I don't know if it was him, but they almost fouled the 3-point shooter at the end of the game, up 4. I don't know if that was him, but never in doubt. A little short-handed tonight. No Kaminga, and Wiggins was there in spirit, but offensively that he couldn't hit water if he fell out of Clay's boat tonight. So I thought Steph was amazing. That little step back 3 he had, that was a little moonshot, man. That was a big shot. Steph was big in the fourth quarter. And I thought Moody and Podziemski specifically were really big tonight. Moody finding his 3-ball over the last, 3 or 4 games has been huge for this team. He always brings the energy and all that, but when he's hitting the 3-ball, he just gives his team, so much more. So, shout out Moody. I know he's been in and out of the rotation, but for him to always stay ready, he's just a consummate pro. So, that was huge tonight. Also, Podziemski, just doing a little bit of everything, rebounding, scoring, assisting. Podziemski had a really good game tonight. So shout out those two. It's kind of a strength of numbers, win for this team tonight. And then the Rockets losing was big, gave this team a little bit of breathing room, 2 games. But, 4 of the next 5 games are going to, I think, in my opinion, define the season. We got the Mavericks twice. We got the Rockets. We got the Lakers. So I think, 4 of the next 5, the season's, kind of on the line. So they've been really gritty, winning 4 in a row, but, can't rest on that. They got to continue to grind. And I'm not sure what's up with Kaminga. Hopefully he gets healthy, but regardless, whoever's on the court, this team's got to get it done. So let's see if they can, make some hay in this stretch and secure a spot in the play-in. Thanks, Evan.
Thanks, Drew. No, I think that last point is kind of where I want to start. And great call, a lot of good points as usual. But Kaminga was someone tonight that I thought the Warriors missed. Like, I know that he's missed 3 games and they've won all 3 of them. And you could have made the case that against Orlando, because of how good Wiggins was, especially in the fourth quarter, that, I was thinking about it today driving in, is Kaminga and the Wiggins pairing, are they, in Steve Kerr's words, a little redundant in the fact that Wiggins has broken out, a slight result of Kaminga's absence? I'm not sure. There might be a little bit of a stretch. But tonight, because of how inconsistent Wiggins was, and he was kind of a no-show. He just didn't have it. I don't want to bury the guy. He just didn't have it. Like you said, you couldn't hit water if you fell out of Clay's boat. He was missing layups. He looked less explosive than against Charlotte or Orlando, and he had a good game against the Hornets too. Granted, they're not a great team, but 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists, nothing to scoff at, especially if we're going to present flowers to Draymond for what he did tonight. I think that the fact that Wiggins was so bad in this game did make me feel like if Kaminga was here, like, he could have helped carry the load offensively. And I would push back a little bit. I didn't look at this as a strength in numbers win. The second unit to me was very opportunistic and stabilizing the first half of the game, which it could have gotten out of hand. Like, the Spurs could have been up 15 points in this game at the half because of, I thought, the lackadaisical nature in which the Warriors came out and played, especially at the beginning of this game. The Warriors' defense had been what had carried them the first 3 games, or, 3 wins of this road trip. But even against Minnesota, if you look at the first quarter numbers that they have allowed so far across this road trip, it was pretty impressive. They allowed 92 points overall to Miami, but I think they allowed less in the first quarter. Orlando 93, Charlotte 97. They allowed under that number to all 3 of their last wins. But, and as I dig it up here, the first quarter. So you look at Minnesota. They allowed 18 points in the first quarter. They allowed 26 in the first quarter against Miami, but against Orlando, it was 11, and then Charlotte, it was 17. Their defense came to play at the beginning of every single game of this road trip except for San Antonio. And that, to me, was a little glaring, considering the Spurs probably have the least amount of firepower of the 4 teams that they've played outside of perhaps Charlotte. But the one thing that the Spurs do, which if you kind of notice, you go up and down the leaderboards, teams that have passers, teams that are near the top of the league in assists, they hurt the Warriors because if you can move the ball against Golden State, it might be a combination of their age in the starting lineup, maybe perhaps some attrition and being a little bit slower, a lack of closing out on shooters, also opening up the lane. The Spurs took full advantage of that tonight, and I thought the Warriors looked tired, and I thought they looked old at the beginning of this game before they found a way to figure it out. And I thought the second unit was the way that they sort of balanced the powers in the first 24 minutes. And then coming out of the locker room, Draymond Green had a second win. Steph Curry had a second win. And those two guys carried the Warriors, specifically in the third quarter, but in the second half as a whole. Those two players, their two best players in a game the Warriors should have and needed to win because of what we talked about, the upcoming schedule that looks a little daunting this next week. You had another 5 games in 7 days, beginning with Dallas twice and then Houston and then LA. Like, they have a lot of hard games coming up, so they needed to win this one. You have to grab wins that you are able to get, and Curry and Draymond carried them. So I guess the strength in numbers angle is, to me, more about the second unit at least holding the Warriors in the game, in which they turned the ball over 10 times in the first half. Chris Paul at least came in the game and was a little stabilizing in that sense, ran the offense, hit a couple of mid-range shots, and when his shot's falling, I think he's he's an excellent contributor from the second unit. Podziemski's energy, when you can sort of condense what Podziemski does, whether it's into 24 minutes or 30 minutes, but you do it off the bench, to me, it's so much more impactful. If I told you tonight that Podziemski had 12.7 rebounds and 4 assists as a starter, you'd say that's solid. He didn't hurt the Warriors, only turned the ball over 1 time. But it doesn't go as far as when he comes off the bench and is able to do it, especially when he can flip the energy in a game. If the starting unit comes out flat, someone like Pods or Moses Moody, who had to step up tonight, or Gary Payton II, those guys can flip the energy of a game enough to give the baton back to the stars who are going to eventually carry the Warriors to a win. That's, to me, is how I saw them puzzle piece this victory together tonight. And I'm curious how other fans read what the game was, who the stars were, but more importantly, how it reflects on the rest of the road trip, one in which I think was a pretty taxing one, and you saw it by the end, and especially at the beginning of this game against the Spurs. 888-957-9570 is the number. Before we get to a break, let's sneak Eric in San Francisco in here, Sterling, if we can. Eric in San Francisco, happy Easter, my man. How are you?
Happy Easter, Evan. So obviously I'm happy with the win tonight, but I think it's kind of emblematic of just the season in general, which is, even from quarter to quarter, the Warriors are just super inconsistent. And, I think, I've had season tickets since 2010, and having watched, the rise of the Warriors, the peak of the Warriors, and kind of the inconsistent years of the past few seasons, I think people who think that the Warriors are somehow going to, come together in the last 10 games of the year and cobble together anything more than maybe a first-round whimper, unless they somehow got a perfect matchup in the first round, it's just kind of unrealistic.
Yeah.
And I think, realistically, we should just kind of evaluate, reflect that 20 years ago when I first started going to Warriors games, they were terrible. It's been a great run, and it may just be we need to reassess at the end of the year. I don't really think this team can get back into championship contention. So it's kind of do we really pivot hard into the future, or are we content with just kind of, riding with Steph and the big three and kind of a dignified slowdown into a reboot? Because I just don't see the assets out there. I mean, maybe you see it differently, but I just don't see how we can get back into championship contention. So I'm content with where we are. It just kind of is what it is. The Wiseman draft pick just sent us back so far.
Yep.
It's hard to recover. So.
No, thanks, Eric. I think really good points. And I do want to dig into that more on the other side, because I think the lack of Kaminga the last 3 games has made me think about the future a little more. In addition to Wiggins and, of course, Draymond Green tonight and what happened in this past week with Stephen Curry still able to do at a high level, but not as high as it used to be. And by the way, Draymond Green is our hardest worker of the game, brought to you by Alameda County Sheriff's Office, who works hard to serve the community. If you're looking for a career in law enforcement, learn more about job opportunities at joinacso.com. Off of what Eric said, this is the question that I want to pose. Not necessarily looking at this game, because I don't think anyone's going to tell you, or at least they shouldn't, that this game means that the Warriors are something that they haven't been. But the flashes, are those enough for you? Like the flash that Draymond Green showed tonight, the flash that Steph Curry had in the second half, is that good enough for you? Is that good enough for you to feel like that this team should be kept together, or that there does need to be wholesale changes? There's still 8 games left. There's still a play-in. There's still a potential postseason series. But do the flashes that you see, and that we've seen, not just from those two guys, but Andrew Wiggins against Orlando on Wednesday, are the flashes enough for you? Or are you still feeling the same as you have watching this team for now 75 games and a team that's the 10th seed in the Western Conference? Which way are you leaning? Because we've seen a lot from the Comcast Business text line. I've seen people chiming in on YouTube about where this team's at and where they could go. Getting back to championship and that echelon, that stratosphere, that's going to be tough. But I want to dig into that a little bit more. So thank you, Eric. 888-957-9570. Are these flashes good enough for you? Are they good enough for the Warriors? Evan Giddings with you on Warriors Wrap Up. We're back after this, 95.7 The Game.
About the IRS, they tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here.
dunk. Little elevation sensation for the man who wears 0 on his jersey. And Greg Popovich wants to talk it over.
Now back to Warriors Wrap-Up on 95.7 The Game.
All right, Evan Giddings with you after the Warriors take down the San Antonio Spurs, survive down in Texas, 117-113, season high 6 games above 500. They are 2 games clear of the Houston Rockets, who lost to another Texas team in Dallas tonight. And now the Warriors are 1.5 back of the Lakers, who also won. Right now for the 10 seed in the play-in in the Western Conference. And what we're talking about right now is the performances tonight from Stephen Curry, and particularly from Draymond Green, who I thought was the player of the game. He impacted just about every part of the basketball game as well as box score that you could. But a caller right before the break, maybe it was a little humbling, maybe it was a little, introspective about where the Warriors are at. But to me, it begs the question, are the flashes or the performance that you saw by Draymond Green, for example, tonight, are those good enough? Like, Draymond, to me, took over the game tonight in San Antonio, particularly in the third quarter, but he made the biggest play of the game with the rebound to Klay Thompson, also a box out, and then a free throw to seal the game down the stretch. You look at what Curry did, 33 points in the second half, much needed. You look at what Andrew Wiggins did on Wednesday in Orlando. He took over part of that fourth quarter. That was much needed. Are the flashes from these players, from these champions, from these core members of the Warriors dynasty, are these flashes good enough for you to feel like this team can make some noise? Good enough to feel like this team can go somewhere this year? Or do you feel like at the end of next week, after you play Dallas twice, after you play the Houston Rockets, after you got the Los Angeles Lakers coming up, and you got some more tough games in a condensed fashion on the way, do you feel like we're going to be in the same place of wondering why we sort of circle back and end up in the same spot? Because it looks like a few members of the Comcast Business Text line, the 949, Dubs got their swag back during this outstanding road trip, will win the play-in and make a playoff run. That's one way. But from the 650 offers another perspective. This is precisely the team that Kerr and Lacob wanted, the same as last year, plus a new version of Kaminga, a little older GP2, CP3, along with the rookies, but the record is the same, and the Western Conference is getting even better. Also from the 650, flashes are good enough that they can play 20 minutes. I'm not sure if all of those things thrown in the big jumbo pot equate to an aligned fan base on where this team is at and where they're going. So I want to hear from you. Evan Giddings with you on Warriors Wrap-Up on 95.7 The Game after the win to conclude a 4-1 road trip against the Spurs. Let's get out to Livermore, talk to Ted. Ted, my man, how are you? Happy Easter.
Happy Easter. I'm quite content with the team the way it is now, and see good things for them because, I mean, they clearly put themselves in this hole where they've just been in the play-in brackets due to the injuries to Curry and CP3.
Yeah,
and I think even Klay had some injury issues, and then of course Draymond's suspension. Since they've all been together, it's past month or so it's stabilized, and it's just like you said, the West is just good all around. So the games back has been about the same ever since they all came back and were been playing together, meaning that if you start from day zero, they would probably be in contention and much closer to the top because they can play even with everybody when they're demonstrating that they can play even with everybody when they have their core three healthy and playing together. And I think the Warriors got lucky with the rookies, two of the best rookies in the league. And Moody's getting better. The rookies are only going to get better. All the young guys trending more to the side of getting better this year, next year, and the year after that. All overlaps with the closing years of the Draymond, Steph, and Klay era. So, man, we'll see what they can do this year, but I don't see how they get substantially better over the next couple of years. And they've got the three core guys that might as well make a run with it. And like I said, these younger guys are just getting better. And I'm excited for the next 2 or 3 years.
Thanks, Ted. Appreciate the call. Yeah, I think that's sort of the, not quite purgatory, but it's a place a lot of people gravitate between seeing where this Warriors team is now versus where they were at the beginning of the season. And to me, it's not the same, but it's in terms of wins and losses, it might end up being exactly aligned with what happened last year, which was because of something that happened off the court, they had to take a ton of time to rediscover who they were, and then there was an absence from Wiggins, and there were players that Kerr was not willing to give rope to, and it just feels like, in a different way, this year is for more basketball reasons as opposed to off-the-court issues, but I do wonder if after 2 straight seasons of kind of twirling around this middle ground of, well, if we played this way the whole year, or if these injuries didn't happen, or if we could have got consistent productivity from this player, or, Kerr had been able to elevate the younger guys earlier, or there's a lot of ifs and buts, and the candied nuts just right now for me bring me back to the same place, which is I'm not sure that being a 10 seed or not making the playoffs or even losing in the first round is justification enough to me to bring this team wholly back and just run it back again. Now, tonight's win was nice, and it still showed that someone like Draymond Green can impact the game. And he impacted every part of this game. He was, in Steve Kerr's words, we're going to hear from him in a moment, he was masterful. He was a genius, and he was the best player in this game. But they need him to do it against a team like Dallas, who's a team they might have to beat potentially in the postseason. He's going to have to do it against Houston, a team that you might need to beat in order just to get into the play-in. They're going to have to ask for these guys to summon this and these flashes more often and more often. And that's why, as much as the four-win road trip is impressive, I mean, they did it in 8 days, but getting the contributions to me, and your other point about this, Ted, is to me the important part, getting the contributions from younger players, to me, those are the guys that you're going to have to, they may not have a high level right now, but to me, they are floor raisers. The Warriors need more floor raisers as opposed to ceiling pushers, because those players that are in an advanced age, to me, aren't going to be able to summon performances like they did tonight in particular stretches, at least consistently. And so you need more of the Moody's, of the Pajemskis, of the Trace Jackson Davises, not to say that that's going to make you a 50-win team, but to me, you need more of those contributions to supplement some nights when Curry's not going to have it, or when Draymond's not going to have it. Or like tonight, I don't think the Warriors win this basketball game if they have to rely on Andrew Wiggins for a full 30-plus minute workload. Kerr was able to go away from him because Moses Moody was an immediate plus. I thought Klay Thompson wasn't great throughout the majority of this game, but they did enough to bridge between when he was out in the fourth quarter and when he had to come back in, and he hit a really big, important shot to put them up 5 with 2 possessions left. So that's a sort of middle ground that the Warriors are going to float between. And while I don't think that there's an immediate fix this offseason that's all of a sudden going to vault them back into title contention, it is hard for me to look at this roster and say, bring these guys back and just assume that what they did over the last 2 months of the season is all of a sudden going to carry and kickstart the beginning of next year. That to me is a little full goldsy. And to just extrapolate, for example, since February 1st, the Warriors now have 21 wins. That is the second most in the NBA. But to just say that you can extrapolate that over 6 months, as we've seen, a lot can happen in a year in the NBA, especially to a team like the Golden State Warriors, to just say that they're going to carry this 2-month stretch over to next season, and that's going to propel them back to a top 4 seed, and that's going to propel them back to a place where they can compete for a title, to me is a little presumptuous. And so I don't want to assume that that's all of a sudden going to be the case. I love the fact they're playing good basketball, but I still look at this team at the end of the day, and I see them 19-24 against the Western Conference. I see a team that has a south of 500 record against plus 500 basketball teams, and especially against the top-tier title contenders, they have not been able to hold up their end of the bargain consistently enough for me to feel like this core, or this 1 through 8 rotation right now is good enough just to run back, and we'll make it work, and we'll try and figure it out as your best players continue to get older, and there's not as many floor raisers, in my opinion, to help them with that. If you feel like I'm off base, if you feel like the win tonight was impressive enough for you to be content with these flashes, to be content with these particular stretches in which a guy like Draymond, who's a Hall of Fame player, Stephen Curry's an all-time player, can take over those games. If that's good enough for you, and you're looking forward to these next 3 years with everything that they have this year and really have had since they won the title in 2022, please let me know at 888-957-9570. In the meantime, let's hear from Steve Kerr, who spoke after the game tonight.
Just overall from the trip going 4-1.
Yeah, fantastic trip, particularly after losing the first one in tough fashion for the guys to bounce back, win 4 straight games on the road. It's a sign of their competitiveness and their grit, and even though it wasn't pretty tonight, they got it done.
Overall, I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but just kind of the ups and downs. What kind of mental toughness did the group show just throughout the entirety of the last 3 days?
Yeah, I think, just recognizing at halftime, what was happening in the game and coming out in the third and changing the momentum in the game with our defensive pressure, and then that connected our offense. And that flipped the game around, and then obviously we kind of had to hang on there at the end. But to be on the road for 8 days and do what we just did, that's a sign of a really good team.
What does Draymond Green mean to this basketball team?
Man, Draymond was incredible tonight. That was a defensive masterpiece. The offensive board at the end with the Clay 3, probably play of the game. But you can see, you watch that game. Draymond he's a genius defensively.
What was the reaction on the bench when he got that box out right in front of you guys?
Oh, guys were going nuts. It was you could see it the whole way too. Like he was, he anticipated the whole play. It's part of Draymond's genius. Is just he seems to be, a half step ahead of everybody. And on that play, you could see him getting position as the shot went up. And play of the game for sure.
No, it was. Yeah, no, Draymond was the player in this game. There's no doubt about that. Now, it's a 4-point win against a San Antonio team that has the worst record in the Western Conference, but it was a win that the Warriors needed. And it concluded a 4-1 road trip in 5 games, which is not easy to do, which has put the position in the Warriors right now to they're 22-15. They're one of the better road teams in the NBA. And they're going to be in a position where they probably are going to have to go on the road and win these types of games. It's just going to be against better opponents. And this is why I might push back a little bit from the 4-3-0. Warriors are playing this road trip like they can beat any opponent in a playoff series, including Denver. I'm not so sure. To me, the fact that the Warriors still struggled to close this game out against a San Antonio team that was missing 3 starters is a little glaring. So I love the fact that Draymond was able to will this team to a win, again, with a 21-point performance, 11 assists, 6 rebounds, and 6 steals, 2 of which were very key against Wembanyama in the fourth quarter. A big box out, a big offensive rebound. Draymond did get the Warriors over the hump in this game. I'm not yet convinced that he, along with Steph and Clay and Wiggins and all the rest, can get the Warriors over the hump in a playoff series. And that's why, looking ahead, to me, I'm very interested how this next week is going to go, because you're going to be playing a Dallas team that has won now 7 games in a row, twice. You're going to play a Houston team that up until today had won 11 in a row and is still hot on your heels vying for a 10 seed. That might mean more to a lot of younger players than it does to 4-time champions. There's still a lot left in this season despite 8 games being left, and I think it is going to determine the future and the direction of whatever Mike Dunleavy Jr. and this front office and Joe Lacob decides to go this offseason. To me, looking at Draymond, this was a game that I was happy he had because they needed to win. I also look at it like it was a game that he owed them because he took the game off in Orlando because he couldn't keep a cool head 4 minutes into that basketball game. If they lost that game, then this becomes even more of a must-win. But Draymond, to his credit, pulled it together. And I would say for the last 3 quarters of this game was fantastic, especially in the third quarter. He owned every single minute that he was on the floor of that game. But I think he owed the Warriors that performance tonight because of his actions earlier. And it explains why, in one breath, the Warriors might feel and fans might feel like they might be done with this guy. But in the same breath, they also still need him for nights like tonight. The question is it worth it? Is it worth needing him for a game in San Antonio? Is he going to be able to give you that against Dallas? And will he help the Warriors show up when they do need it from the 4-3-0, when they are playing on the road in a play-in or playoff scenario against teams that are better than the ones that they've seen on the road during this trip? 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings with you on Warriors Wrap-Up. Let's get out to Greg in Petaluma. Greg in Petaluma, what's going on? Happy Easter. How are you?
Hey, Evan, I totally agree with you about Draymond tonight, but I wondered, why can't he do that every game? I mean, what is it? Why is it we have to look for these makeups and times when he's gotten himself in trouble and stuff, and he's going to pay everybody back? I mean, I don't know. I'm sick of the guy. Listen, the reason I called, Evan, Andrew Wiggins, you had a caller earlier that was talking about how he doesn't make the right pass. He doesn't seem to have what I would call, and since I used to play when I was in high school, so I had a little bit of this basketball savvy, just to kind of know how to play the game. I do not feel, Evan, that Andrew Wiggins has ever really been a basketball guy. I don't think he's got the mentality for basketball, and he's making all this money, and he got selected as a number one pick and so forth. Everybody thought he had talent because of his father, mostly, I think. But the guy just doesn't have what it takes to understand how to play well. And I called Mark last week, and I said, you can wave your hands in front of his eyes, Evan, and you can say the lights are on, but nobody's home.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I mean, look, the question about Draymond, why can't he do this every game? I think that question applies more to Andrew Wiggins than anybody in this roster, because this last week we've seen that when the light is on, then the Warriors, he's the X factor. I mean, it's been the same way since 2022. We've just been asking for this guy to show up consistently. And something that I was ready to come out and talk about, because if Wiggins had played well tonight, and this might be damning, but this would have been the first 3-game stretch since last year, and the first 3-game stretch of this season in which Andrew Wiggins has been a plus, in which he has scored, for example, 20 points. He hasn't done that 3 games in a row this season. He did it twice last season, and it's been less and less consistent from him. So I'm with you. Are the lights on? Tonight, they weren't. He just didn't have it tonight. But I do think that Steve Kerr, unlike last year, is more willing to move off of Wiggins when the light isn't on, and when he doesn't have it, and move on to a younger player like Moses Moody, or use combinations like inserting Gary Payton II that can help the Warriors win this game. I'm not sure they do if Kerr sticks with Wiggins, because he did not have it this evening. But Moses Moody did have it. He hit a couple of big threes. He had 10 points. He was a plus 12, which was tied with Steph Curry for second most on the team. He was positive. Gary Payton II closed this game for Andrew Wiggins and helped the Warriors down the stretch. That's the difference to me, but it is a little indicting the fact that you do need to move off of him and make that decision earlier than you'd like. All right, let's wrap up with Barry in Santa Rosa. Barry in Santa Rosa, happy Easter, my man. You're on Warriors Wrap-Up. How are you?
Hey, good. Happy Easter to you, too. I'm 70 now, and so I remember when teams didn't trade, there wasn't free agency, but that was a different world. But it was so awesome because you could be fans of individual players because they were on your team for longer. Now with all this switching and stuff, you can't really be fans like you used to. And the reason I say that is because I'm okay with the Warriors not winning championships. They don't have to go out and, buy the world. I don't like those teams that got so much money like the Yankees or the Dodgers. They just buy a championship. I enjoy rooting for the players because I kind of get to know the players, and I get to know their struggles and their triumphs and all that. So give me the Warriors. I want to root for Clay. I want to root for Draymond. I want to root for Moody. I want to root for Kaminga. They don't got to. Yeah. I'm having a great time. Yeah, they ain't going to win, but I'm having a good time. But then again, I don't give a crap like everybody has to win 100% of the time, or man, they're so depressed. Like fast food. If they don't get fast food at McDonald's in 5 seconds, they're disappointed.
Thanks, Barry. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a huge fan of the checkbook championships either. I believe Brian Windhorst coined that term. But I also hate to break it to you. I mean, the Warriors are footing currently the largest bill in the history of basketball. I mean, they are the Yankees, or at least Joe Lacob wants to be. You know why? Because they got 27 championships. I don't know if he wants to be the Dodgers because they have not won championships often enough to make you feel like the money that they spend is worth it. But they still try, and they're still relevant. And I think that's where the Warriors are fighting to remain. In the future, they're going to fight, yes, for championships, and they want to win. And Joe Lacob has had this idea of being Jerry Buss, in which he's expressed in the past about, 13 finals in 27 years, or there's something along those lines. But the goal is going to be to remain relevant, to remain competitive. And how do they do that? I don't know about you guys and gals out there, but the Warriors being a 10 seed year in and year out, to me, is not competitive enough. That's not really the place in which I would prefer a team that I'm a fan of to be continuously sitting in. That to me is not competitive. That to me is mediocre. The Warriors, I think, have played very good basketball since the beginning of February. And that's indicated by the fact that they have 21 wins, second most behind Boston, who's the best team in the NBA. But overall this year, they're headed for close to 44 wins again. And that last year got you to the 6th seed. This year, you could probably be a 10 seed. Who knows? If Houston rattles off every single win from here on out, it might not even be good enough to get the 10 seed. And that, to me, is not competitive enough. So I do appreciate the fact that you have love and root for the Warriors. I do as well. But in regards to the money that's invested in this franchise year after year, at some point, results like these are not going to be good enough. And so you have to decide which direction you want to roll in. And I think the direction, to me, there's going to be an inflection point this summer because there are natural pieces that you can either let go or move off of or switch. And to me, to remain in the same place, stuck in the deep end for the second consecutive year and trending towards a place in which you were a 6 seed last year, you're a 10 seed this year. That to me indicates that you're drowning faster than you think you are. That needs to change. And so I think while there's not going to be massive wholesale roster franchise altering decisions that involve someone like Steph Curry, maybe even Draymond or Clay, who knows, there needs to be something done in my mind to get the Warriors back into a place of relevancy and contention. That to me does not involve the number 10. That involves at least getting a first-round postseason series secured to give yourself a chance to go win a championship. The second round is a place that they got last year, and they found out they weren't good enough. And they found out for most of this season that they have not been good enough. But how can they try and conjure up enough, like they did tonight against San Antonio? How can they find a way to conjure that up enough consistently to make themselves competitive this year and give us as well as themselves an idea of what they need to get back beyond the 10 seed to get at least, in my opinion, into the top 6, ideally the top 5. What is the move, or what is, I guess, the difference that needs to happen between now and next season? Because I'm not sure that the Warriors and making a postseason run involves winning multiple postseason series. I haven't seen that from them over the course of this year. I hope they prove me wrong. And flashes like the third quarter of tonight against San Antonio make you feel great about that being a possibility. But just clinging to hope, to me, has not been good enough now for the better part of 2 years. All right, I appreciate everyone logging in, chiming in, Comcast Business Text Line, YouTube chat, Twitch chat. Everyone has been fantastic. I appreciate the conversation that, of course, started tonight with the Warriors' 117-113 win against San Antonio, capping a really good road trip, capping a very good road season so far that has 4 games left, both on the road and home at Chase Center, where the Warriors will try and move beyond 500, beginning with Dallas on Tuesday night. By the way, that's a 7 o'clock tip. Mark Grandy will have you at Ballast Point Brewing Company. Get out there, say what's up, grab a pop. It'll be at 6 o'clock. He's going to be out there beforehand, shaking hands, kissing babies. So go see Mark Grandy. I'll be back with you later on this week that I'm looking forward to as we continue to move forward in this Warriors season. They'll try and get back home and keep this 2-game cushion that they have right now on Houston, which has been given to them by the team that they see on Tuesday in the Dallas Mavericks. In the meantime, I appreciate every single one of you that has contributed to the conversation tonight, that continues to listen to this station. Keep it locked right here, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. tomorrow morning. Morning Roast, Dining Guru, Wilden Dibs, all in your home for Golden State Warriors basketball, 95.7 The Game. Big thank you to Sterling Bennett, our program coordinator. Big thank you to Chris O'Connell, who logs in and locks in every single day, and especially on a day like today in Easter, in which he was taking his kid out, hunting for eggs. Maybe found some, maybe not. All of those of you that spent part of your Easter with us here today, it's a special day. It's a beautiful day. Thank you for doing so. So have a happy rest of your Easter, and we'll talk to you on Tuesday. In the meantime, have a good rest of your evening. I appreciate you. My name is Evan Giddings, saying so long. You've been listening to Warriors Wrap-Up, and you're home for Golden State Warriors basketball, 95.7 The Game.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. 120,000 miles of night drives, daily commutes, and who knows how many.
Are we there yet?